Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, September 19th, 2023. The long-awaited Talk Like a Pirate Day. But I don't actually feel like talking like a pirate today, so that's too bad. I wish we could save it up for a different day somehow. I guess you could talk like a pirate anytime you want. But, I don't know. It's a weird and wacky day, and I always enjoy pointing out that it's happening. And so, my unenthusiastic yar, or whatever, I guess we can throw in things like that all day long. All right, it is a Tuesday, however, and it is time to talk about, well, among other things, government shutdown. I don't know. How are we going to work this out? All right. Well, we've got that on tap, and of course, Joan McCarter, who will join us later in today's program and maybe talk like a pirate, maybe not. I don't know. I have a feeling she would find that, I don't know what, annoying? I was going to say undignified. I'm not certain Joan cares that much about dignified type appearance for everything. She enjoy a joke as much as the next person, but I don't know if talking like a pirate is her thing. We'll find out. I won't even press the issue, actually. Probably by then I'll have had enough of it. In fact, I think I've had enough of it right now. All right, so let's see. Other things that we might perhaps occupy our time with. Oh, this is going to get old really fast. Lots happening, of course, and why don't we head to Pocket and see what some of it is. Oh, one of the things that I note, I guess, it came to my attention in backhanded fashion, I guess, as I was perusing the Blue Sky feed and noticing everybody was talking about it, that they all had, dozens of new followers all of a sudden, and that's their signal that something has gone wrong on Twitter, and everybody is fleeing Twitter and moving over to Blue Sky. You can hit up all your Blue Sky pals for invitation codes. I've given out 3, I think, so far, and I have a 4th one now available. So people who want to flee Twitter, who haven't been able to because they don't have a Blue Sky invite, I guess, I don't know, first come, first serve, so I suppose at this point. Give me a signal and I'll do it. And I think they come at a rate of about 1 a week or something like that. But more and more people moving over. More and more people moving there every day. Very popular, unlike the Truth Social. And I guess the new thing is Elon has announced, and who knows whether it's something he's actually planning to do, something he made up out of the blue, something he's already implemented and just now announcing. But I guess he's going to make the word is he wants to make Twitter a pay service for everyone. I guess he couldn't find enough volunteers to give him $8 a month in exchange for a blue check. So now he wants, I don't know how much, whether it's $8 or something less, from everybody just to be able to use the platform at all. Whether that's, I don't know whether that's to post or to read or both or neither, or I don't know. He's not going to get around to it. He's going to force everybody to buy a Tesla. I have no idea exactly what he's got in mind. He's probably laid it out fairly clearly as he cares to do. I haven't really read it, but I guess that's driving a new round of refugees, and it ought to. And it'll be sad to see it all happen because it was a remarkable phenomenon for a while, but nothing like that can last forever, I suppose. And then, I guess he probably overvalues the whole thing and thinks everybody's going to pay in order to stay on Twitter. I'll be sad to see it go in these terms. What I've been doing lately is, as new followers arrive on Blue Sky, some of whom I recognize and some of whom I don't, I have been referring back to my Twitter account to see, well, what was my relationship with that person, if any, in the old place. And if there was one, then we'll look to reestablish it here in the new place. And it's helpful to be able to see who's new to my feed on Blue Sky and who is carrying things over from the old place. It doesn't really materially affect anything, but whatever. Anyway, so that's in the news, and we'll be paying some attention to that, I'm sure, because anytime something goes wrong on Twitter, it makes news all over the place. Other items that I have socked away for discussion today, and there are many, and they are varied. Let's see. First of all, I suppose I must go to the story that, well, there are several stories out there about new evidence emerging, and I guess we ought to read the stories to find out how, because all I have is the headlines, that the former guy has done a number of dumb, probably also, additionally illegal or things that will be used as evidence against him in the various cases pending against him now. I think most of this stuff had to do with Pervolago and the classified documents. There's, we can just read it to you. I've got two pieces here, the longer of which is where we'll start, I suppose, is the ABC News story. Are they go.com? Yeah. ABC News had this story, and then Steve Bannon over at MSNBC commenting on that and calling out a particular problem. Okay, well, let's see. Okay, we'll start the morning with this fun giant pop-up about tinnitus and what you can do about it, and there's a dude sticking a bottle in his ear. He looked very happy about it. That's good news. And everything scrolls under that thing when I try to read this. All right, well, Trump apparently did more dumb things with classified documents. The headline gives it away. Trump wrote to-do lists for assistant, and I guess for several different assistants. At least we have the testimony of one of them, though, on White House documents marked classified, according to sources. The source of this piece is Catherine Faulders, along with Mike Levine and Alexander Malin, again for ABC News. It is Molly Michael we're talking about. And if I recall correctly, is she the one that was on hand and recording the meeting in which, what was it this time that Trump revealed in that meeting? I can't remember which faux pas he committed, confessing to the various crimes. Totally blanking at the moment, but I guess it'll come back to me as we read the thing. Anyway, Molly Michael told investigators about the documents, according to sources. I choose to believe those sources for right now. So he was writing to-do lists for her. And no, I don't know what Molly Michael's security clearance was. But of course, this whole story shows, one, remarkable disdain for classification entirely, and two, remarkable disdain for the historical and archival value of the documents. These are important documents. He's writing all over them, using them like Post-it notes, and handing them out to God knows who when there's classified information on the other side of them. Just, he doesn't give a damn about anything, and he deserves whatever he gets, and probably twice as much. Okay, so what's up? One of former President Donald Trump's longtime assistants told federal investigators that Trump repeatedly wrote to-do lists for her on documents from the White House that were marked classified, according to sources familiar with her statements. As described on ABC News, the aide, Molly Michael, told investigators that more than once she received requests or taskings from Trump, give me a Diet Coke, or something like that were written on the back of note cards, and she later recognized these note cards as sensitive White House materials with visible classification markings used to brief Trump while he was still in office about phone calls with foreign leaders or other international-related matters. And so I suppose if you hand him a classified briefing card that says, do not congratulate, like with respect to the fake electoral win for Putin, do not congratulate. That's why he didn't bother with the instructions. He had already turned it over and written his lunch order on it and handed it off to an aide. The note cards with classification markings were at Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate. That's the one reason to call it that rather than Pervolago. When FBI agents searched the property and in August of 2022, but the materials were not taken by the FBI. How do you like that? According to sources familiar with what Michael told investigators, probably they were turned upside down and they just looked like lunch orders and shopping lists. And they didn't see the others. I don't know why they didn't take them. When Michael, who was not present for the search, returned to Mar-a-Lago the next day to clean up her office space, she found the documents underneath a drawer organizer and helped transfer them to the FBI that same day, sources told ABC News. Either they missed them in their search or they really were turned over and people just thought they were just note cards with stuff scribbled on them. And she recognized what they were. No, that's interesting. That'll help her in court. The sources said Michael also told federal investigators that last year she grew increasingly concerned with how Trump handled recurring requests from the National Archives. That one I like. For the return of all government documents being kept in boxes at Mar-a-Lago, and she felt Trump's claims about it at the time would be easy to disprove, according to the sources. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I'll jump ahead by saying that the next section, I think, is the one that Steve Bannon called out as being among the more interesting of this article, and he focuses on that one. Sources said that after Trump heard the FBI wanted to interview Michael last year, Trump allegedly told her, "You don't know anything about the boxes," which I guess is supposed to be sort of like, these are not the droids you're looking for. His Jedi mind trick. You don't know, if they ask you about the boxes, you don't know anything about the boxes. I doubt very much that it was a warning like, well, don't get into too much detail and get over your head speculating about what's in the boxes. That'll only lead to legal troubles. You actually don't know anything about the boxes. It'd be best for you to say, I don't know anything about the boxes. And just leave it at that. But he's, of course, wink, wink. You never heard of any boxes. You never saw any boxes. You don't know anything about any boxes. And that's best for everybody. It's unclear exactly what he meant by his prompting, you don't know anything about the boxes. Trump pleaded not guilty in June to 37 criminal counts related to his handling of classified materials after prosecutors said he repeatedly refused to return hundreds of documents containing classified information. You know all about that, ranging from U.S. nuclear secrets to the nation's defense capabilities, and took steps to thwart the government's efforts to get those documents back. Trump has denied all charges and denounced the probe as a political witch hunt. As ABC News previously reported, Michael is believed to be the person, here we go, identified in special counsel Jack Smith's indictment as Trump employee 2, described in the indictment as someone who handled many of Trump's White House-era boxes at Mar-a-Lago and who provided Trump with photos of those boxes that were then included in the indictment. This isn't actually the thing I was thinking of, but it does describe exactly who she is, or at least part of who she is. Michael's statements to investigators, described to ABC News by sources, shed further light on the breadth of evidence that Smith has amassed to support his case against Trump. A Trump spokesperson said that what ABC News was told through what the spokesperson called illegal leaks lack proper context and relevant information, sure. And that President Trump did nothing wrong, has always insisted on truth. No, you don't have to listen to that. A representative from Michael declined to comment to ABC News. The FBI also declined to comment, and that's their job, is to walk around declining to comment on things. Let's see. Oh, I want to jump back. I was checking on the various feeds here, but let's get back to the story. What about this easily disproven idea? In 2018, Michael became Trump's executive assistant in the White House, and she continued to work for him when Trump left office. That was a huge mistake. But she resigned last year in the wake of Trump's alleged refusal to comply with the federal requests and the FBI's subsequent search of Mar-a-Lago. Speaking to federal investigators, Michael recounted how by late 2021, now I remember, she was the one recording the discussion in which Trump says, look at this classified memo, the one about, that he said was General Milley had passed on to him the plans for, contingency plans for, war with Iran, should it become necessary, that he was waving around and saying, look right here, I can't show you because it's classified. I think she's the one that recorded that, session. Anyway, Michael recounted how by late 2021, as many as 90 boxes of materials from Trump's time as president were moved into a basement storage room at Mar-a-Lago and maybe a bathroom, and how, as pressure from the National Archives mounted, she and Trump aide Walt Nauta would bring boxes to Trump's residence for him to review. Trump eventually agreed to turn over 15 boxes of materials, out of the 90 that he had, which Michael told investigators she viewed as a positive sign, sources told ABC News. That's very optimistic. But then, according to what she told investigators, around the same time that the National Archives found nearly 200 classified documents in the 15 boxes and referred the matter to the FBI, Trump began to seem more reluctant to cooperate with the agency, and he asked Michael to help spread a message that no more boxes existed, sources said she recounted. That's when Michael became concerned, knowing that scores more boxes were in the storage room, sources said. And as Trump continued to claim that there were no more boxes, Michael even pointed out to him that many people, including maintenance workers, knew otherwise because they had all seen that there were many more boxes than 15, sources said she told investigators. Smith's indictment against Trump alleges that Trump asked one of his attorneys at the time, "Wouldn't it be better if we just told them we didn't have anything here?" It would not. It would not. Speaking later with investigators, Michael said she believed early on that claims of no more boxes from Trump were easily disproven, and she believed Trump knew they were false because he knew the contents of those boxes better than anyone else. Ooh, that's something he would normally say about himself. And because he had previously seen a photograph of the storage room with all 90 or so boxes in it, ABC News was told. So that's the source of those photos, too. Nice. The Justice Department was apparently just as skeptical. Let's see. Here's something about what the FBI didn't take. In May of last year, convinced that Trump was still holding onto a cache of classified documents, a tranche, if you will, at Mar-a-Lago, the Justice Department issued a grand jury subpoena to Trump demanding he return any and all classified documents. According to the indictment, when Trump attorney Evan Corcoran then planned to search for any remaining classified documents in the storage room at Mar-a-Lago, Trump directed Nauta and another aide to remove dozens of boxes from the storage room before Corcoran got there, so that many boxes were not searched and many boxes responsive to the subpoena could not be found, the indictment said. That's obstruction of justice. Corcoran found only 38 classified documents in the boxes left in the storage room, and he handed them over to the FBI along with a certification allegedly endorsed by Trump that the former president had now fully complied with the subpoena. He had not. But the FBI still believed Trump was holding on to even more classified documents. He was. And when FBI agents conducted an unannounced search of Mar-a-Lago 3 months later, they found 102 more classified documents in Trump's office and elsewhere because he is a lying crook and a thief and a spy and committing treason. But, hey, what can you do? Yar. The next day, after the FBI search, Michael returned to work at Mar-a-Lago and found her desk a bit of a mess, with drawers turned over, sources said. Buried underneath a drawer organizer were the to-do lists Trump had written for her on the backs of briefing notes with classification markings. Michael later recalled to investigators, according to sources. You get the idea there. When Michael discovered that the FBI hadn't taken those documents in their search of Mar-a-Lago, she helped make sure they were given to the FBI that same day, the sources told ABC News. She had good help in that. If it was her own idea, fantastic. If she had guidance, even better. It's unclear if Michael had notified Trump or others at Mar-a-Lago about her discovery. Yeah, it would be unwise to do so, I think. Or if any of the note cards from White House briefings are among the 32 different classified documents that Trump is charged with unlawfully retaining. The indictment also accuses Trump of, quote, trying to obstruct the FBI, because that's what he did, and grand jury investigations by, among other things, providing just some of the documents called for by the grand jury subpoena while claiming he was cooperating fully. Yes. In her statements to investigators as described by ABC News, or sources to ABC, Michael noted that when the FBI first contacted her for an interview as part of their investigation last year, she notified Trump about the request. In response, he told her, "You don't know anything about the boxes." Or more likely, "Remember, you don't know anything about the boxes." Well, she told investigators, according to the sources. A Trump campaign spokesperson, not the Nazi one who was just so recently profiled. We could discuss that a little bit later on, perhaps. This one, Stephen Chung, previously told ABC News that Trump offered full cooperation with DOJ, yada, yada, yada. Anything you need from us, just let us know, etc. Big lie. Anyway, according to transcripts of contemporaneous voice notes made by Trump attorney Corcoran and reviewed by ABC News, Trump did make such a statement on June 3rd of last year at Mar-a-Lago. Anything you need, just let us know. We're fully cooperative, etc. Big lie, like I said. This was June 3rd was when senior Justice Department officials and FBI agents came to retrieve those 38 classified documents that Corcoran had found in the basement storage room. But according to the indictment, that's the same day Trump caused a false certification to be submitted to the FBI, claiming that there were no more classified documents. And before Trump spoke with a Justice Department official, many of his boxes were loaded onto his plane, headed north for the summer, according to the indictment. In addition, after the Justice Department weeks later issued a second subpoena for security camera footage from inside Mar-a-Lago, Trump tried to have some of that footage deleted to conceal information from the FBI and grand jury, the indictment alleged. Alongside Trump, the indictment also charged Nauta and another Trump aide, Carlos de Oliveira, remember him, for their alleged roles in the conspiracy to hide classified documents from the FBI. They have each pleaded not guilty. That's the end of the story. And, each of these stories gets longer and longer as you have to summarize the long trail of criminal activity and additional criminal activity trying to cover up initial criminal activity. And it gets longer and longer just to keep things in context. But I'm glad that they actually, do recount that context. Let me see quickly. Is there any reason, though, now to go through Steve Bannon's retelling of this? He really was mostly interested in the instruction to tell the FBI that you don't know anything about the boxes. Putting it this way, by any fair measure, all of the criminal cases against Donald Trump are serious, though one seems to be the easiest to prosecute. As Republican Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana recently put it, the former president's classified documents case looks like a slam dunk. And while that assessment seemed more than fair under the circumstances, that doesn't mean the scandal can't get worse. ABC News has reported that the Republican's longtime assistant, Molly Michael, told federal investigators that he repeatedly wrote to-do lists for her on documents marked as classified. So that was a startling bit of information. In other words, according to ABC News' reporting, which has not been independently verified by MSNBC or NBC News, just so you know, Trump had a habit of using classified materials as effectively scratch pads. But as remarkable as those allegations are, there was another element to the story that stood out for me. It was the you don't know anything about the boxes thing. Just so we're all clear, the boxes refer to the containers filled with sensitive materials that Trump improperly took to his glorified country club. I don't even know that it's glorified. After leaving the White House, his longtime assistant was almost certainly familiar with the boxes, which makes it all the more notable that the former president allegedly told his aide, you don't know anything about the boxes, after learning that Michael was poised to speak to the FBI. It's almost as if Trump was concerned about his assistant telling law enforcement the truth. So he took the legally dubious step of subtly encouraging her to play dumb. Indeed, it's reminiscent of former White House aide Cassidy Hutchinson being told, the less you remember, the better, as part of her January 6th testimony. Last month, after Trump tried to publicly discourage Georgia's former Republican lieutenant governor from testifying before a Fulton County grand jury, New York Magazine's John Chait noted, what can certainly be ascertained without any legal training is that this is not the behavior of an innocent man. Similarly, innocent people who have no idea they're engaged in wrongdoing generally don't feel the need to tell assistants, you don't know anything about the boxes, before they talk to the FBI. Certainly a good observation. You had to land on that, given what was being discussed. I think, by the way, somewhere in here, if I scroll long enough, and I mean it could take hours, here we go. I had put aside this story a couple of days ago that Mark Sumner summarized on the front page at Daily Kos under the headline, Trump has mystery office near Mar-a-Lago, reportedly with, quote, boxes everywhere. Maybe it's time to catch up on that story that he published at Daily Kos on September 11th. We know that because we never forget September 11th. You see? Former President Donald Trump is currently facing 40 counts in the investigation involving classified documents. You know all about it. But despite the indictment detailing how Trump allegedly transported some of those documents away, like on the plane north for the summer, right? And even reportedly showed them off to a writer at his New Jersey golf facility. That was the recording we were talking about. It appears the FBI never searched this nearby office or other Trump locations. I guess at least some, and there are hundreds. They're all over the place. Considering the number of properties Trump owns, searching them all would be a challenge, but it seems like an exception might be made for the office detailed in an NBC report. That office is just 10 minutes down the road from Mar-a-Lago, in a building that also houses offices of the Secret Service and IRS. So I guess it would be easy to find. Not only is it reported that there were boxes everywhere in the office, it is also known to have housed classified materials at one time. And best of all, the office is paid for with taxpayer funds. Yes, of course you're paying for this. The office in question is on North Flagler Drive in West Palm Beach, Florida. According to NBC, this location is being rented out of funds intended for Trump's post-presidential office. However, those who walk in expecting to find any kind of staff or even Trump's name on the door are going to be disappointed. Although that is the trend in real estate these days, of course, you take Trump's name off of things. I don't think Trump's name was ever on this one, though. The office nameplate is covered over with a blank piece of paper. Did they look on the other side of the paper? It might be a classified document. There's no sign on the door or on the frosted glass window. For a guy who loves to stamp his name on everything he owns in giant gold letters, this location is conspicuously austere. The address is also not listed on the webpage dedicated to Trump's post-White House office. Even Trump spokesperson Stephen Chung claims he has never heard of that North Flagler office. Interesting. Hi everybody, it's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Or read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, here we go. And there's the button I was looking for. Hey, okay, welcome back to the show. I was responding to an early request for one of those blue sky codes. I had one. I'll give it away. Hopefully this will work. And everybody's good friend and fellow listener, Athena 5000, chimed in first and wins the prize, or at least chimed in first on Mastodon anyway. Who knows who may have asked for these things, although, there it is. Oh, okay, good. It's another request from Athena, except via Twitter. And you know, I found I was a little bit worried about sharing blue sky codes on Twitter. It might be the sort of thing that they were searching for and blocking, but Mastodon certainly won't block anything. Although it was difficult to know. I pressed the little button that said direct message in order to respond, but it looks exactly like a regular message. So I don't know. Anyway, go grab that code quickly, use it up. It does expire if you let it sit for too long. I don't know what the time period on it is, but even if that wasn't a direct message, if you quickly go and use the code right away before anybody else can grab it up and use it instead of you, then it's effectively a direct message. So, all right, go ahead and do that. I give you permission to do it while you're listening to the show. And if you miss anything, ask John Shiflett, he's paying attention, or Scott Anderson, who will tell you what happened later on anyway, whether you ask or not. So, okay, let's see. Where were we on this thing? Oh, yes. We were reading Mark Sumner's story about the other pretty much unknown, as yet unheard of, I guess, unmarked official fund or official taxpayer-funded post-presidential office for Donald Trump, which apparently was filled with yet more of those weird boxes that sometimes contain classified information for no particular reason. Okay, so where were we? According to NBC, it has apparently housed classified material at some point. How they know that, I am not sure, but they felt comfortable saying so. The FBI never conducted a search of the property, but it has been searched by a private firm selected by Trump's attorneys, which suggests that they didn't do a very good job. Reportedly, the office still has boxes piled up against the wall and in the main room, kind of like Trump's Mar-a-Lago shower, though probably without the tacky fixtures. It's reported that several of Trump's aides working for his campaign, or PAC, have worked out of the post-presidential office, presumably meaning the North Flagler location. That would be a violation of federal law, which prohibits partisan activities in what is a government facility. Asked about this, Chung reportedly failed to respond. But the bigger question about this office is one that could be applied to many Trump properties. What's in those boxes, and why hasn't the FBI looked? In an interview with Business Insider, Bush-era Special Prosecutor Peter Zeidenberg suggested that the FBI was unlikely to search other locations because they were not, quote, gonna go just looking around. They would need search warrants, I guess. Probably, yeah. However, since there is already convincing evidence that this location held at least one box of classified documents, and some of the charges against Trump and co-defendants Walt Nauta and Carlos de Oliveira concern attempts to conceal documents, shouldn't that be sufficient cause to get a few search warrants? It could be. Besides, Trump regularly accuses the FBI of being engaged in a witch hunt. Compared with that, a fishing expedition seems pretty benign. According to a February article in The Guardian, at least one box of documents with classified markings were transported to Mar-a-Lago from another office in Florida sometime after the FBI completed its search of Trump's resort. These documents appear to have come from the North Flagler office. Private parties hired by Trump's legal team to search the office, along with Trump Tower and the Bedminster golf site, No, private parties hired by Trump's legal... Okay, yeah, all right. They search, okay. That sentence checks out, although it didn't read right to me, or maybe I read it incorrectly. But, all right, it makes some sense if you look at it correctly. The Department of Justice was reportedly unhappy with the Mar-a-Lago search and pressed for a repeat visit to that location. No additional private searches appear to have taken place at Bedminster or North Flagler. Many of the documents from the box at North Flagler appear to have been related to Trump's schedules in the White House. In January, the federal grand jury investigating classified documents case issued a subpoena for one of those documents, a folder marked Classified Evening Briefing. That document was reportedly found in Trump's bedroom, which is a horrible place to be under any circumstances. Okay. So, interesting. Good information. Good to have in background. Why might they not have bothered with the search? Well, any number of reasons. Of course, what's interesting about it is that I don't know exactly. I don't know whether Trump could spin it in his favor all that easily, although he could say, well, you see, it's not like the federal government suspects that I'm hiding classified documents in every single Trump property. They're just a few. So it's not a widespread problem. I don't know how he could. I mean, he could certainly lie about it and turn it into anything. And they are very adept at spinning wild tales from the, most meager germ of truth. But probably the better story here is from the prosecution's side, in which they would say, if you take this evidence, whether it's circumstantial or in some cases, maybe not the most reliable evidence in the world, but if you put it all together, you get this story. Trump has clearly, it's been established, I think, that he's been hiding, he's taken classified documents that he's not authorized to take. He's hidden them. He's obstructed the search for them. He's moved them around to different locations. It's clearly established that he's in control of this property. It's established separately that there were classified documents stored there at some point, and even that there may have been a transfer of classified documents between the North Flagler office and Mar-a-Lago or vice versa. So lots of good reason to search. But on the one hand, the prosecution, well, they haven't, I guess, conducted a thorough search of the property because they already have him dead to rights on the stuff that they've found. And I guess there's some question about, well, how much more does it add to find even more documents elsewhere? But you don't know until you know how many documents there are. What was the nature of those documents? The prosecutors may already know, and they may not be high value documents after all, or it could be that it just doesn't add very much to the case, or it could be that they would add more to the case, but to demonstrate how meticulously we are in fact complying with procedure and protecting whatever rights this idiot might still think he has and may actually be afforded. We're not simply running roughshod over him and grabbing up every document we can on the thinnest premise. If we want to search, we got to have a warrant. And if we want to have a warrant, we want to make sure it's perfectly well founded and unassailable. And if we don't know exactly what documents might be there or exactly what their nature may be or how they got there or when they got there or which boxes they're in or whether they're on premises, we don't want to do anything related to a fishing expedition. We want to know what we're going to get before we go and get it so that the documents are unassailable as evidence and that the warrants are unassailable on their faces. I think that might help explain things. That might not actually be the reason, but it's I think a reasonable guess at this point. And if you're worried about, well, why haven't they searched this office? They may not need to in order to close this case against him. And they, it may be that they're one step away from having an ironclad affidavit upon which to base a search warrant. And they want that they may actively be searching for that last bit, or they may not be because they don't think they're going to get it and within this time frame, and it doesn't make a material difference in prosecuting the case based on the documents they already have. That's my best guess about those things. Let's see. There were some other hints in this story about where I wanted to go afterwards, and I think I've lost that thread in my head. So let's just jump back to the top of what's in pocket and have a look. Okay, yes, there is other news out there. Let's see. I guess the by way of more gentle segue, it requires that we take a look at this report, which I first saw last night via social media coming out of Business Insider, and it's a good entry in the everything Trump touches dies category more than anything else. Fun headline: Rudy Giuliani's ex-lawyers sue him for the $1.4 million that they say he owes for defending him in election interference investigations. Jack Newsom and Jacob Shamsian report for Insider here. By the way, let's see, I'm just sort of looking at this funky picture that they've used to illustrate their piece of on Giuliani. It has the brand of name of his glasses visible if you zoom all the way in. I was just curious. What brand of glasses is it he's wearing? Hawkers? Is that what it says on the side? I'm not familiar. Anyway, doesn't matter much, but I thought it might reveal something interesting and fun, but not so far, unless some of you are familiar with the brand and there's something funny about that. Anyway, as you know, Insider always summarizes things with a bunch of bullet points up top, but I find that it ruins the telling of the story. So, Rudy Giuliani owes nearly $1.4 million to a law firm that represented him in investigations related to his attempts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. That firm says, not only do they say it in a new lawsuit that they've filed against Rudy Giuliani. I think that's funny all by itself. Rudy Giuliani getting sued. Even funnier, Rudy Giuliani getting sued by the lawyers he hired to represent him. And of course, we've read stories in the past couple of weeks about Rudy complaining that Trump wasn't either covering his legal bills for him or paying him for his prior legal work for Trump so that he could use that money to pay his legal bills. In other words, For all the lick-spittle fealty, no funds flowing from Donald Trump to Rudy Giuliani, and in all likelihood, he struck this boot-licking, subservient pose all these years with Trump because he figured many dollars would flow his way. That's always the myth of getting involved with Donald Trump, is that money and benefit will flow your way, and nothing ever flows from Donald Trump. As we know, everything Trump touches dies, and more to the point, everything Trump touches dies because Trump affirmatively kills it and loots its grave. So, to no one's surprise, Rudy Giuliani didn't get his money. Amazingly, no lawyer ever learns the lesson that if you represent Trump, you're not going to get paid. But lawyers now need to learn the lesson that if you represent people who are going down on charges related to being an accomplice of Trump, they're going to have a hard time paying you too, unless they're independently wealthy, because they all did what they did because they thought they would get paid by Trump, and they're not going to get paid by Trump. And so you're not going to get paid either. And so here we are with second-generation cousins once removed of the leopards that originally ate everybody's faces, now themselves hungry for yet more faces. Rudy Giuliani owes nearly $1.4 million to a law firm that represented him in the investigations. The lawsuit filed in Manhattan State Court on Monday alleges Giuliani agreed to pay over $1.5 million to the law firm Davidoff, Hutcher, and Citron under a retainer agreement, but has paid only $214,000 to date. Robert Costello, a partner at the Davidoff firm who is a longtime friend, and not anymore, and lawyer to Giuliani, is also a plaintiff in the lawsuit. Giuliani made a token payment of $10,000 earlier this month, which still leaves a balance of $1,360,196. The complaint claims. They got very exact with that. They didn't put any cents, C-E-N-T-S, in there. They didn't put any S-E-N-S-E in it either, I'm sure. And I guess Giuliani made a token payment of $10,000 earlier this month after we heard briefly in one of the shows, maybe last week or the week before, that Trump had grudgingly agreed to hold a fundraiser for Giuliani's legal defense fund. And I mean, it was an expensive thing, but there was no crowd. Nobody turned out because I think the price tag was something like $100,000 a plate or something. And I guess one person ordered one side dish because all he had to give to the lawyers was $10,000. So probably the case that none of the money raised actually had made it to Giuliani's pocket by then, and Giuliani speculatively paid out $10,000 in the hopes that he was going to get the money raised at this fundraiser. And he'll probably be bitterly disappointed later on about that, too. Costello represented Giuliani from 2019 until this summer, the suit says. He advised Giuliani on special counsel Jack Smith's investigation into the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol, a criminal probe by federal prosecutors in Manhattan, Prosecutor Fani Willis's investigation into attempts to overturn the 2020 election in Georgia, a congressional inquiry, attorney disciplinary proceedings that could cost Giuliani his license to practice law, and more than 10 civil lawsuits. So lots of work was done, but the payments are at least way behind, if not never made at all. What can I tell you? I got to warn Costello and the firm here. I hope, it may be that they're representing themselves in the suit, as a cost-saving measure, but then again, we're always reminded, and they really do take this seriously when they tell you this in law school, right? An attorney who represents himself as a fool for a client. It's really best to just let somebody else handle the case dispassionately for you than to handle your own case. You're just apt to make more mistakes in handling your own case. But it would be wise from a fiscal point of view, because if they're hiring somebody else, this is a prestigious law firm, presumably, and they're going to want an equally prestigious law firm representing them if they get outside counsel to help them with this suit. But this outside counsel, it's hard to find, top-notch, white shoe, representation that will work on a contingency fee, but I hope they did, for their sake, find somebody who works on contingency, because they're going to have a hell of a time getting paid as well. If you represent lawyers who are suing Rudy Giuliani for non-payment of legal fees because he has to defend himself in a Donald Trump-related case, you know, you're not going to get paid either. Costello's not going to get any money out of Giuliani. He doesn't have any to turn over, or at least not that he isn't burying in coffee cans somewhere. I'm sure he's hoarding cash at some level, but then he's spending it as quickly as he's hoarding it. And he's going to have a hell of a time. He couldn't pay Costello, and Costello isn't going to recover anything from Giuliani for ages, I would guess. And he's going to be unable to pay the lawyer representing him and his firm in seeking to recover their legal fees from Giuliani. So anyway, leopards, second course, third course. Eat these faces. Well, anyway, Giuliani and Costello, it says, are, or I guess were, longtime friends. Both were prosecutors in the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York back in the 70s. By the time Giuliani ran for New York City mayor in the 1990s, Costello was a major financial supporter of his campaign, according to the New York Law Journal. So Costello's relationship with Giuliani is all take, as far as I can tell here. I can't express how personally hurt I am by what Bob Costello has done. Oh, this is Giuliani speaking. What Bob Costello has done, I guess, is how he probably said it. Giuliani said in a statement to Insider, "It's a real shame when lawyers do things like this. And all I will say is that their bill is way in excess to anything approaching legitimate fees." Well, that could be true. But that's the world you live in, Rudy. Costello didn't immediately respond to any requests for comment. Now some discussion of Rudy's money troubles, and that's always fun to hear. The case is the latest indication that Giuliani, once a sought-after lawyer, is in desperate need of cash. Costello went with Giuliani in April to try to convince Trump to pay him, to mixed results, CNN reported last month. More recently, Donald Trump held a $100,000 per person fundraiser for Giuliani at his Bedminster, New Jersey golf club earlier this month, though it's not clear how much money they raised. Although, honestly, if even one person went, they raised $100,000, or at least they think they did. But remember, this is Donald Trump doing the collections here, so who knows whether any money would make it back out of his pocket. And two, they are raising money from Donald Trump's friends and associates. So I would guess that there's probably a fair amount of, yeah, I'll come. Give me the food. I'll eat it. I'll hobnob around Bedminster. I'll have my photo taken with you, and then I'll just never pay for the tickets. Probably a lot of that going on too. But if even one person showed up and paid, that's $100,000. Rudy paid them $10,000 on that. And so you paid 10 cents on the dollar that he was supposed to get, probably figuring that's about how much will make it to me, right? $100,000 per person. One person showed up. $90,000 will be pocketed by Trump's, campaigns or other operations, super PACs, what have you. 10,000 will make it to me. On the assumption that I'll get that 10,000, I'll pay you 10,000 now, Robert, in the hopes that you won't go ahead and sue me. But I guess you could say they're smarter than that because they went ahead and sued him anyway. So it'll be interesting to see whether he ever makes that money and whether anybody ever reported at any point how many people went. They did say there was a small crowd, but that would be that much easier to tell me how many people went to this fundraiser. I don't know. Anyway, one of Trump's PACs has also paid $340,000 to a legal records firm that Giuliani owed money to, records show. That's of some interest. May or may not have anything to do with this other bill. Giuliani has told judges he lacks the funds to pay fees for several cases, but has resisted showing financial statements in court and took a private jet to his booking in Georgia. So there's that. He has even faced sanctions, in one case brought by two Georgia election workers who Giuliani falsely claimed rigged election results. A judge slapped him with an automatic loss and an additional $132,000 in legal fees after he provided only a sliver of the financial documents required to be produced for the lawsuit. In August, Insider broke the news that Giuliani put his Upper East Side apartment on the market for $6.5 million. Giuliani is also at risk of being unable to work as a lawyer again. In July, a panel of the D.C. bar recommended that Giuliani's law license be revoked. Giuliani isn't the only Trump ally to fail to pay legal fees to Costello. Just to Costello alone. In July, a New York state judge ordered Steve Bannon to pay his firm $500,000 after the former Trump advisor was sued for failing to pay his legal fees in connection with the January 6th investigation and with a federal criminal case over his GoFundMe to build the U.S.-Mexico border wall. So Costello brought it on himself by opting to help defend and represent Trump World and racked up millions of dollars in fees, and hey, nobody's paying him. What a weird outcome that must be. Must be surprising everyone. Let's see. There was something else that sparked a thought as I was reading. Oh, yeah, right. Taking the private jet to his booking in Georgia while claiming to have no funds. Did I put anything away on this one? I'd have to scroll again to find this, but I may not have put it away because it was so infuriating but also unsurprising. And as I recall, maybe I didn't put it away. I'll have to make a note to go and look for it. But I noted that, I guess the families, suing Alex Jones, including many of the Sandy Hook families, who successfully sued him, I can't remember exactly what the charges were, but as you know, the lies and untruths that he spread about that particular incident and the families involved in it, and claiming that it was all a hoax, et cetera, and they sued and won, and there was a huge judgment against him, and he literally owes them $1 billion. And as you might have guessed, infuriating as it is, he's pretty much thumbing his nose at that, saying, I don't have any money, but is spending, I think the story was the outrageous amounts that he was spending on monthly expenses for himself, living the same lifestyle as ever, taking private jets places, paying for, personal security, spending thousands of dollars on meals and entertainment, all the while saying, I don't know, I just don't have enough to pay the victims in this case, and you can't make me. And for the most part, it takes a very long time for courts to be able to make someone to do it, and it's never as satisfying as you had hoped. So, once again, more of Trump World living high on the hog by cheating others and ignoring the dictates of the law and justice. That's the story of their lives, and they make it the story of our lives. Okay, well, let's see. Other stories to investigate. Our top of the hour break coming up soon. Here's something interesting. Totally a shift of subject. We'll go to sort of international news, which we rarely do. But there were two headlines that grabbed attention this morning and probably even grabbed your attention. The first I'll only mention in passing because it's major headlines in the United States. Iran releases 5 Americans as U.S. unfreezes billions in oil revenue for Tehran. This will come down to the classic spin fight between, I'm sure Republicans will be saying, yes, sure, 5 Americans were freed from Iranian captivity, but you gave away some sort of concessions to the Iranians, and so therefore you are a terrible negotiator. Versus having spent, of course, months saying Biden isn't doing anything to gain the freedom of these American hostages. Well, he did. And what did you think the Iranians were holding out for? Just, a signal that we indeed had a saber to rattle. That wasn't going to do it. But at any rate, we'll wait for the political fallout to play out and see whether people take any notice of it, but we'll at least mention the story. Iran releases now 5 Americans as the U.S. unfreezes billions in oil revenue for Tehran. The terms of the deal have generated intense criticism, can you believe it, from Republicans, even as the White House insists Iran will be prevented from spending the money on anything except humanitarian goods. So that's the twist in the story. Yes, we let them have access to the money, but no, they can't buy weapons with it or anything like that, except, who knows how things actually work out. But the idea is that there were these restrictions so that they could use it only for humanitarian aid. Michael Shear and Farnaz Fasihi, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, contribute to the story. 5 Americans who had been imprisoned in Iran were allowed to leave the country on Monday, President Biden said, after 2 years of high-stakes negotiations in which the United States agreed to unfreeze $6 billion in Iranian oil revenue and dismiss federal charges against 5 Iranians accused of violating U.S. sanctions. The announcement that the Americans took off in a plane from Tehran just before 9 a.m. Eastern, which is when we start our show, by the way, came as Mr. Biden and Ibrahim Raisi, Iran's president, were to attend the United Nations General Assembly annual meeting of world leaders in New York on Tuesday. That's today. And it's Talk Like a Pirate Day, and I'm wondering if those two guys are celebrating the occasion. The 5 Americans, some of whom had been held for years in Evin prison, I don't know, I'm not aware of it, but it's apparently one of the most notorious detention centers in Iran. I've never been arrested in Iran, and so I just don't know. And they flew from Tehran on to Doha, capital of Qatar, for a Cold War-style exchange with 2 of the 5 Iranians. 3 others declined to return to Iran, according to U.S. officials. So that's pretty interesting. We released them, and they decided to go elsewhere, and who knows what their motivations might be. I don't think I can speak to those. The Americans were given a brief medical checkup in Doha before they boarded a U.S. government plane, and they landed at a military base in Virginia at 5:30 a.m. on Tuesday morning before we started our show, before indeed many of us were awake, according to a senior administration official. Okay, so we have that story on the record. I'm sure we'll be hearing more about it as it becomes a political story in the days to come. We'll be right back for another segment with more international news of some note after this. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Update on the Blue Sky situation, successfully received by Athena 5000, so she'll be jumping over to Blue Sky and can escape Twitter. That's good news. Also, fellow listener, Mighty OCD, and contributor, I would say, by the way, contributing this. He's got a few codes to spare if any listeners need one. And he hashtagged KITM on that on Mastodon. Check around. I don't know whether he did. He probably also did it on Blue Sky as well. But it is getting difficult, more and more difficult to monitor every single platform on which we're working. There's Athena already all signed up, so I'll follow along. There we go. Excellent. So once again, if you are on Mastodon but not yet on Blue Sky and you're following along with Mighty OCD, it's Mighty OCD. Let me give you the address so that you should be following anyway. Mighty OCD at mastodon.social. And there are a few codes for Blue Sky on offer there. So if you need any, jump on in, fellow KITM listeners. Let's get us all evacuated. And whether we all settle in Blue Sky eventually or somewhere else is neither here nor there. But let's at least have temporary shelter where we can continue to communicate with one another. All right. Let's see. Yes, we were in the middle of the Iran story, although I don't know that I want to read all the way through it. I really should, and maybe I'll do it off air. So, I can be a little bit better briefed on exactly what's going on here. And, I mean, there's a lot to it, and we probably should be discussing it. And, many times, well, when it's procedure or domestic politics with which I'm more familiar, or cases against Donald Trump, which I'm perfectly happy to learn for the first time on the air. That's one thing. I feel more comfortable discussing those things. This, I'm just reading you an article which you likely will be reading on your own anyway, and I don't know if I have a whole lot to contribute to this story about international tensions and sanctions, etc., between the United States and Iran. But it's definitely big news and will definitely create a lot of political news in the days to come. So we do have to make note of it. There is a story on the international front which I'm happy to just express astonishment at and learn about right along with you, although several of you probably have better perspective on it because you are Canadian. It's a Canadian story. Sorry, eh? But I'm going to read it anyway, even though this is like a pirate day. Is there a Canadian history with pirates at all? I mean, pirates, the stories we tend to hear and see in the movies, for instance, which is an interesting phenomenon if you think about it. Again, like mob movies, like why are the heroes of these stories the bandits, the criminals? That seems odd. But anyway, wow, they're swashbuckling and yada yada, but they have some honor underneath it all, even though no, they don't. They were horrible people in most cases. But then again, piracy had a weird history, especially with England and their empire and explorers and the crossing the lines between, are they like legitimate swashbuckling heroes of the empire, or are they in fact thieves and bandits, as the Spanish would have told you, as they were stealing, hijacking Spanish ships and stealing the gold all the time, but there was this state of war. Very weird situation. And why did they have their own lingo, pirates? They didn't. I don't know. It's all movie magic. Anyway, but when we see these things, they're usually in warm waters. They're associated with for us, the pirates of the Caribbean, or, I don't know, North African pirates, or, I don't know, but somehow like warm coastal regions. But Canada's got plenty of coastal regions, just not warm coastal regions. Were pirates uninterested in stealing lumber and maple syrup or something like that? Is that what it was? There's gold to be had on the west coast anyway of Canada. You don't hear about pirates sailing off of Alaska and hijacking shipments of Canadian gold, but I don't know, maybe they weren't shipping it anywhere. You Canadians keeping your gold? Is that what was happening? What's the story with Canada and pirates? Anyone? All right. Well, you got all day and Talk Like a Pirate Day to tell me what you know about it. But that's not what this is about. Canadians, did you know this story? Justin Trudeau accuses India, the player I didn't expect in all of this. If you thought the weird twist was Canada, Trudeau accuses India of killing on Canadian soil. In other words, is India like taking cues from Putin and, who knows who else? Mr. Bonesaw, MBS in Saudi Arabia. But it's weird how the associates of this BRICS alliance are all sort of also taking the worst of everything from one another. If there was a part of the world, a non-aligned movement, for instance, old non-aligned movement players who were thinking, hey, maybe BRICS is an alliance we should get behind, it's maybe worth noting along the way that they're doing some unsavory things as well. And by unsavory, I mean the worst possible things. Murdering, in some cases, their own citizens, in some cases, people who have taken refuge in other countries, and just generally showing disdain and disrespect for sovereign boundaries and the like, not to mention human life in general. So here's the story. The subheader tells us the Canadian leader, Trudeau, said agents of India had assassinated a Sikh community leader in British Columbia in June. India called the accusation absurd. I don't know what else they're going to try and do. They want to duck it, obviously. But Ian Austin and Vyosa Isai, I'm hoping I got even close to the pronunciation of the second author's name, have written this piece. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau of Canada, thankfully, here in America, they have to remind us, he's the Prime Minister of Canada, said on Monday that agents of the government of India, that's the quote, had carried out the assassination of a Sikh community leader in British Columbia in June, an explosive allegation that is likely to further sour relations between the two nations. And here in the United States, we don't think about anybody but ourselves and our relationships directly with others, and we give no thought to what might be going on between, some of our most important allies and other countries, even when both countries are ostensibly allies. I mean, ostensibly extends to the Indians at this point. If Donald Trump were in office, he would be saying ostensibly applies to Canada. But it doesn't. It's really clear where we stand with Canada, even though they now have to plan for what to do if we have an authoritarian takeover in this country. So sorry. I'll apologize to you for once. Speaking in the House of Commons, Mr. Trudeau said that he had raised India's involvement in the shooting of the Sikh leader, Hardeep Singh Nijjar. It's my best guess at Nijjar as a surname here. Directly with, that Trudeau had raised it directly with Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, at the Group of 20 summit meeting earlier this month. That must have been uncomfortable. And did so in no uncertain terms. He said the allegation was based on intelligence gathered by the Canadian government. Any involvement of a foreign government in the killing of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil, and this is a Canadian citizen now at this point, like with us and Jamal Khashoggi, he was not an American citizen yet, but he was living here on a green card. But there, the murder was committed overseas, but yet not in Saudi Arabia and somebody else's soil in Turkey, muddying the waters. But still, everyone was pretty clear that that was, a huge break with protocol, plus also a murder, and a grisly one at that. But this, just straight up killing a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil. But any involvement of a foreign government in the killing of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil is an unacceptable violation of our sovereignty, Mr. Trudeau told lawmakers. He said Canada would pressure India to cooperate with the investigation into the killing of Mr. Nijjar, who advocated Sikh separatism. Melanie Joly, or Melanie, how does she pronounce? I'm not up on my pronunciation of the name of the foreign minister in Canada, but that's a super high-ranking minister, and why don't I know it? Sorry, Canadians. I'm paying attention to everything else in the world. But their foreign minister later announced that Canada had expelled an Indian diplomat whom she described as the head of India's intelligence agency in Canada. And of course, everybody knows that everybody plants intelligence agents in everybody else's country. So no surprise that India is doing the same that the United States does elsewhere. India's foreign ministry rejected the Canadian allegations on Tuesday morning as absurd and politically motivated, saying that Canada had long provided shelter to Khalistani terrorists and extremists, as they call them, who threaten India's security. Khalistan is what Sikh separatists call the independent state they seek to create. The ministry said that Mr. Modi had completely rejected the allegations when Mr. Trudeau presented them to him. We urge the government of Canada to take prompt and effective legal action against all anti-India elements operating from their soil, the ministry said in a statement. And, stridency on both sides. It's kind of what it's expected. They probably both knew going into it that they were going to be making statements like that. Even if they actually, I don't know, there's no evidence that they had any private understanding of anything different. But even if they had, I think they probably would both have agreed, well, you need to say this and I need to say that, and we're just going to do that. And we can have ongoing private conversations, or that may be it, that the surface appearance of disagreement and intransigence might actually be what's happening here. It's always hard to read this stuff. It later said, that is the government of India, that it had moved to expel a senior Canadian diplomat based in India. The allegation that India's government was involved in a political killing in Canada is likely to further corrode relations between the two countries, and probably ours as well. Earlier this month, Canada suspended negotiations on a trade deal with India. that were scheduled to have been concluded this year because of the assassination allegations, it now appears. During the G20, Mr. Modi excluded Mr. Trudeau from the list of leaders with whom he held formal bilateral meetings. Mr. Trudeau said many Canadians of Indian origin, and they make up about 4% of the Canadian population, had been angered by the killing, of course, and in some cases feared for their own personal safety. There are about 1.4 million Canadians of Indian heritage, many of whom are Sikhs. They include Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the opposition New Democratic Party, which is keeping Mr. Trudeau's minority government in power. Singh is a common surname and middle name in Punjab, in case you were wondering whether there was any relation between the victim of the assassination and this leader of the New Democratic Party. So that's of some interest too. So that will raise things to a different level too. Trudeau likely would have wanted to press this issue regardless, but the fact that the leader of the New Democratic Party, which I guess is keeping Trudeau in power despite holding only a minority of seats in the parliament, just give him more leverage to move this to the top of the agenda, I guess. Mr. Nijjar, 45, was shot near a Sikh temple in Surrey, British Columbia. At a news conference in June, investigators from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police said he had been ambushed by masked men, but would not say whether the attack appeared politically motivated. In this country, when someone is shot near a Sikh temple by masked men, I think our first thoughts are that they are confused white supremacists who think that Sikhs, because they wear turbans, are in fact Muslims who rarely do, if ever, wear turbans, though there are certainly some who do. And but usually you're talking about Iranian clerics, Shiite clerics from, so, you know, whatever. They used to see pictures back in the Iran hostage crisis days, not the one we just ended today, but the what we termed the Iranian hostage crisis from 1979 and 80. Whenever we saw pictures of the guy who became our arch nemesis because of it, Ayatollah Khomeini, he of course was wearing a turban in those photos, and so therefore American racists got the idea that what we're looking for here in terms of targeting people around here is people with turbans. And unfortunately, the Sikh community ended up, mostly in later years, becoming the targets of their raids. Even when we went to war with Iraq, it was that heavily ingrained, deeply ingrained in the minds of American reactionaries and racists. Going to war with Iraq is sort of like Iran, even though they really aren't, and they had war with one another within recent memory, and therefore something turbans, and yeah, unfortunately, that ended up resulting in violence against the American Sikh community. So totally different context, I guess, happening in Canada, though you could certainly find reactionaries and racists in Canada who would probably make the same mistake. That wasn't their first assumption here. Mr. Nijjar was known for his advocacy of the creation of an independent Sikh nation, Khalistan, that would include parts of India's Punjab state, and India had declared him a wanted terrorist. I guess because they felt they could get away with it. And Modi sort of taking cues from BRICS partner Vladimir Putin in that respect, I would say. Citing the police investigation, neither Ms. Joly nor Dominic LeBlanc, the Minister for Public Safety, offered any details about Indian involvement in the killing, but Mr. LeBlanc said that Jody Thomas, Mr. Trudeau's national security advisor, as well as the head of Canada's intelligence service, had traveled over the past few weeks to confront the Indian intelligence agencies with these allegations. It was unclear from the two ministers' remarks how forthcoming the Indian government has been or what cooperation, if any, it has offered. Ms. Joly said that she planned to discuss India's actions during meetings with Canada's allies after she travels to New York this week for the UN General Assembly. So another incoming visitor for that event. The announcement came on the same day that a judge opened a public inquiry into interference by foreign governments. It was prompted by allegations that China is meddling in Canadian politics. But Mr. LeBlanc said that reviewing India's actions are within the inquiry's mandate. Interestingly enough, obviously these allegations are at a much more serious level, he said. Mr. Nijjar was vocal about the threats to his life, which were shared with Canada's spy agency, the World Sikh Organization of Canada, a non-profit, said in a statement. Okay, I'm just trying to figure out how that sentence was built here. As I'm reading it, I'm saying, well, now, the World Sikh Organization of Canada isn't Canada's spy agency. So I was able to make that distinction. But then I thought, he shared the threats to his life with the Canada Spy Agency and the World Sikh Organization of Canada. Well, he probably did share it with them too. But what they were trying to say was he shared it with Canada's spy agency, according to the World Sikh Organization. Okay, who had issued this in a statement. If these allegations are true, they represent an outrageous affront to Canada's sovereignty, said, Pierre Poilievre. How do you say this? I'm terrible with French, and I got to get better. Poilievre. So I'm guessing that's like Poilievre. I know nothing about French. It's amazing. I had a choice. It was French or Spanish, and I went with Spanish. And that I can pronounce, in French I just can't. However, it's okay because he's the leader of the Conservative Party, and maybe we don't like them, possibly. So, okay, I'm outrageously mangling his name, but that's because he's conservative. I play these games. I do. Our citizens must be safe from extrajudicial killings of all kinds, most of all from foreign governments. I guess that's something you can generally agree with. Anyway, Mr. Singh, the new Democratic Party leader, broke with protocol to address the House of Commons in Punjabi as well as English, and said he had spoken with Mr. Nijjar's son. I could hear the pain of that loss in his voice, Mr. Singh said. I can only imagine how much more painful it is going to be knowing this potential connection. Rumors about possible retribution by India against those critical of its government have stoked fear within the Sikh expatriate community and discouraged many from returning to that country, Mr. Singh said. But Canada, he said, has been seen as a beacon of safety. That safety and security that so many Canadians feel has now been rocked, he said. Well, true. Sikhs are a relatively small religious group with about 25 million adherents worldwide, most of them in India. A violent Sikh insurgency that took shape in India in the 1980s killed a number of government officials. The government responded with widespread human rights abuses, including torture and extrajudicial killings, according to human rights groups. In 1984, Prime Minister Indira Gandhi sent the military to storm the Golden Temple in Amritsar, the holiest site in Sikhism. I remember this incident, which had been fortified by heavily armed Sikh militants. The government said hundreds of people were killed in the clash, but others put the death toll in the thousands. In retaliation, 2 of the Prime Minister's Sikh bodyguards assassinated her, prompting riots in which thousands of Sikhs were killed. In 1985, a bomb exploded on an Air India flight from Toronto to London, killing all 329 people aboard. It remains Canada's deadliest terrorist attack and worst mass murder. After a prolonged investigation and trial, 2 Sikh separatists from British Columbia were acquitted in 2005 of murder and conspiracy in that explosion, as well as a second blast that killed 2 baggage handlers in Japan. Many witnesses had either died, some were murdered, or apparently been intimidated out of testifying. Wiretaps by Canada's intelligence agency had been erased before they could be used as evidence. Wow. And physical evidence was destroyed in the blast. A 3rd Sikh man was found guilty of manslaughter for his role in making the bombs and later of perjury at the murder trial. No one covered in glory in this situation here. About a year ago, Ripudaman Singh Malik, maybe I got that right, one of the men acquitted in 2005, was shot to death. Holy cow. 2 men were later arrested, but the killing rattled the Sikh community in British Columbia. Holy cow, what a story. And I guess time to get a grip on that one as it unfolds just to our north. So just a little bit of out of our way from our usual beat, but it sounds like an escalating situation that will probably have repercussions for years to come, and will bring us in especially as we observe from afar the development of this BRICS alliance, and see where it's headed. And it's a little worrisome, to say the very least. Okay, let's see. We got a couple more minutes left before our bottom of the hour break, and during which we will jump into our discussions with Joan McCarter. And, let's see. She could have any number of directions she wants to go, and I'll try and avoid treading on some of those. Let me, I'll tell you what. We'll occupy the rest of our time before that break with what I think is the latest reporting from ProPublica on Clarence Thomas. They have a little extra information to offer here, but they offer it over the course of one of their long and epic investigative articles that we'll never get all the way through. But you got to know the latest headline grabbing details. Brett Murphy and Alex Majerski, putting together this latest entry. Headline here reads, Clarence Thomas's 38 vacations. It sounds like a movie title, actually. The other billionaires who have treated the Supreme Court justice to luxury travel. Did you know how many of them there were? During his 3 decades on the Supreme Court, Clarence Thomas has enjoyed steady access to a lifestyle most Americans can only imagine. A cadre of industry titans and ultra-wealthy executives, all mysteriously his friends all of a sudden, have treated him to far-flung vacations aboard their yachts, multiple yachts, ushered him into their premium suites at sporting events, and sent their private jets to fetch him, including, on more than one occasion, an entire 737. How do you like that? It's a stream of luxury that is both more extensive and from a wider circle than has previously been understood. Like clockwork, Thomas's leisure activities have been underwritten by benefactors who share the ideology that drives his jurisprudence. Their gifts include at least 38 destination vacations, including a previously unreported voyage on a yacht around the Bahamas. Ooh, I love the Bahamas. 26 private jet flights, plus an additional 8 by helicopter, a dozen VIP passes to professional and college sporting events, typically perched in the skybox, 2 stays at luxury resorts in Florida and Jamaica, and 1 standing invitation to an uber-exclusive golf club overlooking the Atlantic coast. Let's find out if we can, which one that is. This accounting of Thomas's travel, revealed for the first time here from an array of previously unavailable information. I think unimaginable came up earlier, is the fullest to date, anyway, of the generosity that has regularly afforded Thomas a lifestyle far beyond what his income could provide. And remember, you get a guaranteed lifetime job there so that you basically are never wanting for anything, and therefore would be less interested in engaging in this sort of activity. But that wasn't enough for Clarence Thomas, and $180,000 something or whatever a year. I'm one of the most powerful jurists in the country. Shouldn't I be getting paid? And it's hard to argue in the age of multi-million dollar compensation for every C-level officer of almost every sizable corporation, that your pay is commensurate with the importance of your work. But, that's the deal. Guaranteed, lifetime, almost $200K, security, et cetera, and the power that comes with it. The trade-off is, I'll never be uber wealthy. But, Clarence Thomas did not accept this deal. He wanted more. He wanted the uber wealthy lifestyle. And guess what? There were people willing to provide it, which is why, the lifetime appointment thing is part of the deal, so that you'll be able to look past it. But he wasn't. And neither was Alito, by most accounts. Anyway, Here we go. While some of the hospitality, such as stays in personal homes, may not have required disclosure, Thomas appears to have violated the law by failing to disclose flights, yacht cruises, and expensive sports tickets, according to ethics experts. All right. And they do note here, by the way, not only is this affording Thomas a lifestyle far beyond what his income could provide, it is almost certainly an undercount of all of the vacations and various freebies that he's been offered. Perhaps even more significant, the pattern exposes consistent violations of judicial norms. Experts, including 7 current and former federal judges appointed by both parties, told ProPublica, "In my career, I don't remember ever seeing this degree of largesse given to anybody," said Jeremy Fogel, a former federal judge who served for years on the judicial committee that reviews judges' financial disclosures. "I think it's unprecedented," says the guy who reviewed the records of the worst offenders. Wow. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Joan McCarter is with us. It's Talk Like a Pirate Day today, Joan. I don't know if you heard that earlier.
I did hear that earlier.
You did hear that? Okay.
No, I'm not.
Oh, I see. All right. Well, that's all right. You're not obligated to do that. You're not obligated to do anything. Plenty going on that I can let the steering the conversation go and take your cues. But I was interested in reading that, and I'm sure over the next, probably before I ever get to the end of the article, the latest ProPublica article about Clarence Thomas's the latest facts and figures about how corrupt he actually is. There'll be another one out, and the numbers will be inoperative anyway. But I was interested to find out that I can't believe how many billionaire friends that guy has. I have 0, and I don't know about you, but I guess he's been hoarding them all, as it turns out. But yeah, that was, we all know about him. It's always interesting to hear more details about it. It does strike me kind of, as I was reading more about this, that, the whole idea of giving judges lifetime appointments to the federal bench and pretty healthy salaries, although, they are government salaries. And I guess, we've all been spoiled by, or, in theory, I haven't been, because I don't get that kind of money from anybody anywhere, anytime. But, CEO salaries and not even CEOs, see anything. Chief technology officers, assistant executives in various companies make actually, in many cases, far more than Supreme Court justices. But the idea is you're taken care of for life for a number of reasons. One, so that you'll remain supposedly politically independent. That's out the window. And 2, that you won't find any need to seek bribes from anyone because you're covered. You got a nice house, a nice life, security provided by the government. You're going to get paid almost $200,000 a year till you die with these people. And it's supposed to keep you, from wanting to go on the take, and I guess it's not working. And they've been in spectacular style, and it's really astonishing for some, particularly for, it's not astonishing for hypocrites. So I guess maybe that's it. But for lovers of the Constitution who just want to honor the founders' views on things, the founders thought they were setting you up for life so that you wouldn't do this, and golly gee, what an insult to the founders, if you look at it that way. But I'm sure Thomas is not looking at it that way.
I don't think Thomas is looking at it that way.
He may not be looking at it at all. Just give me money. I don't care where it comes from. I'm not looking. But, okay, this doesn't have to be our topic. However...
it's a good topic.
Yeah, it wouldn't. It's
It'd
not
be a
far
better
from
topic
what you're working on.
If there was anything we could do about it.
That would be great. But as you know... There's no such thing as impeachment in this country on the federal level or the state level, for that matter. So another violation of the founders' trust.
A Democratic president.
Yeah, well, you can impeach them all you want. You just so far, no matter what they've done, nobody's been removed from office not as a president anyway. There have been judges removed from office. Hint, hint. But
hint, hint.
Yeah. But we don't do that with Supreme Court justices, I guess. So, even though we've threatened it in the past with Democrats, but Republicans need to be free to do anything they want. And they're doing everything they like, apparently, so far. So, let's see. I see your top story chronologically, even though if it's not top of mind for you at the moment, is your piece on Leonard Leo being at the core of the Alabama redistricting dispute. That's sort of judicial.
That's very judicial, and it does bring in Brett Kavanaugh. The tie to Kavanaugh is a little tenuous. I mean, it's there. But whether Kavanaugh is, being like Alito or being like Thomas and actually colluding with Leo and the Alabama Republicans, we don't know.
Okay.
He is definitely the focus of their effort on this redistricting plan.
Kavanaugh.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was the surprise vote. Remember when the Supreme Court said, no, Alabama, you do have to redraw your districts, and you do have to add a second one that allows for black voters to choose who they want to represent them. That was a big surprise. Roberts had got Kavanaugh to flip to his side for the majority vote.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, I do recall that happening and that being
right, and it essentially salvaged Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, the last sort of vestige of the Voting Rights Act that has any teeth at all.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Then, several months later, along comes the decision on affirmative action.
Okay.
Where they got Kavanaugh on their side to overturn it.
Mm-hmm.
So now the people involved in representing the Republicans who defied the Supreme Court on that order and went ahead and created their gerrymandered racist districts, they're appealing to the Supreme Court with an emergency order, so that would go to the shadow docket. They wrote it specifically, quoting like 10 times they name-checked Brett Kavanaugh, quoting 3 times him saying that from the affirmative action case, it's time for these kinds of racial policy-making decisions to be over. So they think that Kavanaugh's going to flip for them.
That's an interesting thought. We'll see whether that's the case.
Supposedly, according to Alabama political reports, their sources are saying that the Alabama Republicans have intelligence, quote.
Well, I don't know about that, but all right.
That Kavanaugh will flip.
Okay.
So, it's all, but what we do know is that this is basically being masterminded by Leonard Leo's buddies in a D.C. law firm that also had the affirmative action case.
Okay.
And are representing Republicans in Alabama.
All right. If Republicans from Alabama are in Trump circles, I would just caution those attorneys that you're not going to get paid. So don't do the work. But they might still believe they're going to get paid. It's not Donald Trump himself or Rudy Giuliani, for instance, that they're representing. Kavanaugh, anything's possible. Of course, he could flip. And the Alabamians involved will likely say that he's going to flip more out of wishful thinking than anything else. Not that I trust Kavanaugh not to, but if he wanted to, it's certainly available to him. Well, we quoted you 3 times or more saying that these sorts of policies should end. And he could say, yeah, that was from that sort of era of good feelings there, post Citizens United, post VRA destruction, when the prompting from the chief was, yeah, we're not going to have overt racism driving the redistricting in the South anymore. So maybe it's time to shift away from that, because one black guy, remember, he once won an election. So therefore racism is over, and we were being very optimistic. And as it turns out, you did exactly the thing that we said you guys weren't going to do anymore. So I guess you're not ready for it. And that's what I think drove the chief and presumably Kavanaugh to change direction. You're quoting me from when I thought you were going to be reasonable. Now I see that you're not. And I'm not going to do that. But it's also possible to say, oh yeah, I did say that. Well, what the hell? What kind of vacations or jet travel have you got?
Right.
Do you have a menu? A bribe menu? I'd like to order.
There has to be a reason why Alabama Republicans felt like they could just thumb their noses at the Supreme Court. Why they could say, yeah, F you, SCOTUS. We're going to do this our way anyway.
Yeah. Hard to tell exactly
I
what it might
can
be.
see that being Leonard Leo and the money and the connections in the background saying, we'll back you all the way, and you have the chance now to get what's left of the Voting Rights Act.
Yeah.
Alabama Solicitor General, and I should remember his name off the top of my head, but I don't, is a young guy. He was a former Trump judicial nominee. And most of his career has been focused on trying to undo the Voting Rights Act.
Okay.
Voter suppression is his thing.
They have a number of such people.
Yes. And of course, that if he's going to be a Trump nominee, he's going to be a Federalist Society member, and he's going to be in tight with Leo. So, yes.
And maybe also a paranormal investigator.
Right.
Side, you never know, or enjoyer of Beetlejuice.
Web is definitely the thing that is driving.
Okay, that could certainly be the case.
Thumbing their nose at the Supreme Court, which is still sort of astounding.
Yeah,
it really just shows how tenuous everything is right now in the United States when a state just says, "Yeah, we don't have to listen to the Supreme Court."
Yeah.
And there's nothing anybody can do about it.
Right. The lovers of the Constitution, of course. Except when it comes to pretending they're latter-day secessionists. But whatever. And the motivation may be some combination of things. It may just be, we'll pay for the challenges. And look, there's nothing to lose. Say you have the right to continue to do this. If you're right, or, quote unquote right, and you happen to win over a majority of the Supreme Court, great, awesome. We've suppressed the black vote again. Terrific for us here in the Republican Party. If you lose, you lose. The court order makes you do it, and we'll pay the...
Well, and then they won't do it anyway. The way I look at this now happening is this is an emergency order. This pending now before the Supreme Court. I don't think that this is something they're going to be willing to do on the shadow docket. They've gotten so much grief for all of the really horrendous things they did on the shadow docket. They've really pulled back.
Yeah.
From doing these huge kinds of decisions in secret. So they've dialed that back.
Okay,
But what
I
this
can see
means
that.
is that there's going to be litigation ongoing on Alabama's districts for who knows how long while the voters are in limbo. But I do see it coming back to the court eventually. They might reject this motion and then, wait for further litigation and take it on then. It's going to stay in the courts, though. And Kavanaugh is probably going to be the linchpin.
Yeah, well, that's not bad for them either. That's seems to be part of their plan. As long as it's before the courts, they can say, "Well, gosh, you can't settle this yet. We don't know the outcome, and an election is coming. And why don't you just let us use the old districts for now,
Right.
one more time?" But they've already done that once, and they keep doing it. And as long as there's litigation, they say, one more election, and then it's redistricting time again. What do you know? 10 years later, they only have to find 5 excuses to delay things, and you've made it a full decade.
Right.
And it's time to redistrict anyway. All right, well, we'll get it right this time for sure. Oh, what? Look at that. They eliminated even the last one black district. You can't do that. Well, you say that now, but shouldn't we examine exactly what we did? And also, would you like a vacation? And what do you know? It takes another 2 years, and another 2 years, and another 2 years. And I guess that's right. They can. So far, they've been able to ignore the court's orders with impunity. And so why wouldn't you just try to limp along 2 years at a time?
And this is the question. What do you do? How do you answer that? There obviously isn't an answer to it. They can get away with it. You can tell the Supreme Court, nah, I don't feel like it. And get away with it.
I guess so. I mean,
unless, of course, you're trying to provide somebody an abortion.
Yeah, in which case, there we have an emergency to step in. You absolutely can't do that. Well, they find their ways to hurry things along when they need to, or maybe this is part of their plan too. Well, I feel like it makes us look foolish that we can't enforce our orders, but if we're constantly supposedly trying to enforce our orders, that gives the other side incentive to make sure that we take their side under advisement, and maybe that's best done from the deck of a super yacht. And I just need some time to ponder the case in the Riviera or something like that.
Basically, and this is the thing that sort of confounds me. What does enforcement look like?
Yes, that's true too.
They just take away Alabama lawmakers' ability to draw districts? Do they say, sorry, you can't do it? We're appointing some outside entity to do it for you and impose that? I mean, what does enforcement look like? They're not throwing them all in jail.
Yeah, no, they should try that one, but probably not. And anything they try, of course, is subject to some challenge, right? Appoint a special master, that's usually well within the court's powers, but then someone will say, gosh, it's a separation of powers issue. This is a legislative function, and the judicial branch is stepping in. Oh, yeah, we should ponder that. Maybe
and
over
the Constitution
cigars.
says states are in control of elections, so
yeah, they can make it take forever.
It's a mess.
It is. I just thinking about this in the background, Kavanaugh being involved in it. I wondered whether, and thinking about his various controversies and how, what was the unexplained issue was, how did you pay for those fancy baseball tickets? And I wonder whether he's reading the stories about, hey, Thomas gets all his tickets for free. How come I have controversy? I had to pay for tickets and collect money from my friends. He gets them.
That controversy has lived on, although I think it's been pretty much decided that his parents paid off his debts.
Yeah, most likely.
That he got the money from mom and dad.
Yeah.
That's gotten less attention. I mean, people keep saying, where'd you get the money? Where'd you get the money? He got the money from his parents. So there probably wasn't nefarious stuff going on there. At least not at the
legal, at least.
$250,000 level.
Yeah. But I guess it's still embarrassing to say that. I don't know. But, if you're lifetime appointed, I guess you could say, well, I'm willing to live down this embarrassment because it's not changing. And now I get good money. So my parents paid it. But by the way, my dad still makes, 10 times more than me as a retired executive. But anyway.
But I'm here for life. And,
Yeah.
if I play my cards right, I get a lot of great yacht trips.
Yeah, I know. He could try that. Or he could keep his nose clean and still live a fairly decent existence, and even in the high expense Washington, D.C. market. Pretty interesting. By the way, interesting commentary on the old American dream there. But never mind that. You made it to the Supreme Court, son, and you'll make, about a quarter of what I pull in retirement. So, I don't know. All right, well, that's neither here nor there, except it underlies everything we do. But okay. In the meantime, let's see. Barreling toward government shutdown.
Government is almost certainly going to shut down in 11 days.
Because it is September 19th right now.
Everybody's relying on McCarthy to fix it.
Well, he's the guy who, I don't know, has the gavel, ostensibly. They said, we'll set you up for the fall. And he took it. And now we're stuck with it. And Greg mentioned that there was a deal that was floated, and I'm trying to make out from the headlines.
A deal was floated, and it's the only plan they've got. And the hardliners, there are more than enough people who've said, no, there's no way I'm going to vote on this. That it should be dead, but it's all McCarthy's got, so it's what he's pushing.
Well, okay. Yeah, yesterday it was unsure whether they were going to allow McCarthy to say that it was something he got, that he was going to try and maybe say, it's not me, it's somebody else, so that maybe hardliners would say, oh, well, in that case I can be for it, but I guess they saw through it, or it was just terrible to begin with.
It was written up by Chip Roy and Byron Douglas, is that his name? The Floridian.
Yeah, I forget.
From the Freedom Caucus. And then two guys
Byron
from
Donalds?
three. Yeah, Donalds, thank you.
That's it. The other D. Okay.
Yes. And then, and some other Freedom Caucus guy and three people from the Main Street Caucus, supposed establishment.
So they wrote
So they created this whole plan. It's ridiculous. It's never going to pass in the Senate. It doesn't have a prayer in the Senate. It cuts funding for everything except defense and veterans by 8%.
By 8%?
Which means it's not a continuing resolution.
Oh, right. I guess that's
continuing resolutions, by definition, continue funding at current levels.
Yeah, that's the continuing
here
part.
We cut. It adds a bunch of provisions from the racist immigration bill that they passed in July that the Senate's never going to take up.
Mm-hmm.
And it only lasts for 4 weeks. So it's presuming that in 4 weeks' time, the House and the Senate will have passed all 12 appropriations bills, reconciled them, and they'll be signed into law.
Well, no.
That's not going to happen. I mean, it's kicking a dysfunctional can, and it's not going to pass the Senate. So this is what McCarthy's hanging his hat on, while at least 6, probably at this point 8 or even 10 of the hardliners, the hardest of the hardliners. Well, no, you can't even say that because Chip Roy was one of the guys who helped negotiate this thing. Anyway, they're just at each other's throats. Everybody's fighting with Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz is fighting with everybody else.
He's choosing that, yes.
Marjorie Taylor Greene's in there saying, we can't give aid to Ukraine. We can't give aid to Ukraine. There isn't Ukraine aid, as far as I've seen, in this agreement. Oh. So she's in the middle of it all, supposedly McCarthy's big ally.
Yeah.
They're just openly at war with each other. Victoria Spartz is out there tweeting out how weak and pointless McCarthy is. McCarthy's fighting back. Gaetz is attacking McCarthy for attacking women.
What? Not leaving it for him to do?
Right.
You're in my territory, man.
Should have, thought about expelling Matt Gaetz back when he was, showing nude pictures of on the. He
could have been out of your hair.
Colleagues.
They never take those opportunities, right? They could have had Donald Trump out of their hair too, but in the Senate, and they wouldn't take it. Here's a chance to get rid of Matt Gaetz and make him less annoying. No, we want to keep him around. But
And what's really frustrating in all of this is Senate Republicans seem to have decided that they've got to just let this all play out, and somehow that's going to save McCarthy. Because up until now, Senate Republicans have been trying to basically help get this resolved, working with Democrats in getting funding bills passed. In fact, last week they voted 91-7 to move forward. They voted for cloture on a minibus bill to kick it all off. And then Ron Johnson stood up and said, yeah, no, I'm not going to allow you this amendment agreement you came up with. So you're going to have to do it with 67 votes, and let's just waste a whole week. And apparently Republicans in leadership are going to go along with that.
What?
Somehow they think if they just draw this out, that McCarthy's going to pull what he pulled on the debt ceiling and come up with something that he can pass.
Well, gosh.
Sort of ignoring the fact that he had Biden helping him.
Yeah. Huh. Well,
and
they're buying into the myth.
That sort of was a shocker to me, finding out that the Senate has just decided that, okay, if we have a shutdown, we have a shutdown.
I guess. Well, I could see it happening on, I suppose you could see Democrats saying, well, look, if Republicans want to do this to themselves, I guess one, we might not be able to overcome it. And two, everyone will see that the Republicans have shut down the government. But that's not entirely clear necessarily.
There's a lot less if you go back to the debt ceiling fight.
Yeah.
There's a lot less impetus for Democrats to help.
Yeah.
And for Senate Republicans, because, the defaulting on the debt was a huge unknown and really, really, really scary.
Yes.
So the responsible people really did not want that to happen, Democrats and Republicans alike. We've been through government shutdowns before. Democrats know that Republicans are going to be blamed for it. Republicans know that Republicans are going to be blamed for it, but it's not the same level as catastrophe as debt ceiling. So it's happened before, it can happen again.
Okay. I could see that being the thinking.
So Democrats have absolutely no incentive whatsoever to help. Other than, liking to see government functioning, which is kind of important, and disaster relief being passed, and Ukraine aid being passed, and all of these kinds of important things.
Yeah. We'll see whether that holds.
The Senate Republicans, though, they really want to retake the majority next year. And being responsible for a shutdown, not helping avoid it, is going to be a bit harder for them to run on.
Is there any chance that they think, well, this time it'll finally work to blame it on a Democrat, and we'll say, Biden, something, even though nothing has reached his desk? How could he possibly, no matter what? He can't just order the government to stay open. But I don't know. Somehow, if you put it past the political press, you know what? Why don't we just say he's so old, the government shut down? Okay.
And they would try it. They would certainly try it.
It's copy. Let's go.
My clock is fast, by the way.
Yeah. I thought that was your reacting to the Republican ideas about these things. It's all right. I'll just add that myself. I happen to have that at the ready. So, all right. Well, let's see. So they normally, the conventional wisdom these days, even among Republicans, is government shutdowns never work for us. We've tried it like 8 times in a row and been killed on every single one of them. I guess someone somewhere could be saying, so we're due for a win on something like this.
The only thing that I can see McCarthy is thinking is that somehow they managed to get this thing through. They managed to pull it out, pass it, and then the Senate neglects it or rejects it rather, so they can say, it's the Senate's fault we shut down.
And that's Democratic control.
I think this is the only rationale behind it. And I think it's not going to work because Because
Yeah.
of course they shut it. And there are enough of the crazies in the Freedom Caucus that just say, yeah, no, we would rather shut
Yeah.
it down. Let's just shut it down.
There's
We're not
that
gonna vote
too.
for your thing. We want to shut down government because that's what we do.
Yeah. And they know that they'll do. And I guess what's your incentive to work hard on it as a Senate Republican, thinking, well, yeah, I got to do this to save the party and to save our chances of winning control of the Senate next year, but it's just going to be destroyed by people who don't care about that, and they're on our team. So maybe I don't work hard on it this time. Yeah, and I guess you're right. The only thing there is available to the imagination with McCarthy is he's just got to be thinking, I don't know how it's going to work, but it will because it has to, because it always has before. You know, I don't know how to do it, but, you know.
He doesn't know how to do it, clearly.
Yeah.
And, yeah, there will probably be a motion to vacate, too.
Yeah, I guess so, eventually.
But, you know, there's also nobody else to take the job. So.
Right. Yeah, motion
not?
to vacate, and to what end, we don't know. And it'd be interesting to see what if anything happens. And I could see them just rejecting the motion to vacate and just say, well, try it again after we get the government back open again, maybe. But I don't know.
No, because they're going to be too busy impeaching Biden.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, there's always that excuse, too. But maybe that'll keep them happy. The people who want to see the chair vacated or also want to see this impeachment go forward, and it'll be easy to distract them with that instead. Well, it doesn't bode well, but okay. Well, we now know what's up anyway, and it occurs to me, like, next Tuesday we may be off the air next Tuesday, but maybe we can check in at some other point, but I'll have to work that out with you what the schedule is going to be. But I appreciate coming by as always, and man, it's confusing just to figure out what they think they're going to do in the end. And there just may be no answer to it, just like there's no answer to...
I don't think there's an answer to it. I don't think there's any...
This
is not rational.
We'll only be able to know when we read it as history. Okay.
All right.
Not great, but thanks for keeping us up to date. We'll talk to you again soon, Joan. Take care.
Next time, whenever that is.
Yes. We're going to shut everything down in between now and then.
Kagro in the morning with David Waldman.
All right, and it's time now to hand things over to Justice Putnam, who will tell you what's going on in the rest of the world and bring you his international takes as well. What has he got in the international news section for today? Let's see. Netanyahu administration has complained to Germany after the German ambassador attended a high-profile Israeli Supreme Court hearing looking, okay, ready for this, at the legality of Bibi's judicial overhaul. Stay tuned for more information on that and more from around the world.